5 years ago, I met a young man in his mid-20s who was taking a break from training to be a professional golfer. But his break wasn't voluntary. It was to cope with pain from juvenile idiopathic arthritis, known as JIA. Sadiq told me he was diagnosed when he was just a few years old and that he had been on a cocktail of medications ever since. But the change, but the pain challenge persisted every day of his life. Thank you for joining me for unearthing a novel approach to living better with arthritis. Given the growing popularity of cold plunging, let's just dive in and then I'll come back and map out our discussion and come back to Sadiq's story. In the 1996 book by The Arthritis Cure by Dr. Jason Theodosakis, he put natural remedies, specifically glucosamine, on the menu for addressing arthritis. But why was this important? Arthritis affects 1 in 5 North Americans, but the ratio escalates with age, and arthritis impacts quality of life, inhibiting joy and ability, and in its severest forms, contributing to disability. The arthritis challenge has led to significant investment in pharmaceutical research. The U.S. National Institute of Health in 2023 invested $321 million on arthritis research. That was not an outlier, but reflected consistent growth in their arthritis research investment. Arthritis Research Canada and similar organizations in other countries invest many millions as well, as do pharmaceutical companies. We could get lost in the numbers. ChatGPT estimates the annual research exceeds $5 billion. The research is driven in part by the high cost of treatment. Meditech Insights published in February this year, right? In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to address some leading supplement ingredients for managing arthritis and unearth for you the discovery and research of an interesting clay mineral complex that may offer even more hopeful results for than the better known natural health supplements for arthritis treatment. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the most important integrative approaches. That is lifestyle and diet, and even hands-on therapy such as physio massage. Supplements should not be considered a silver bullet. Yes, for some, they may come close, but it's really important to encourage people to pursue healthy diets and lifestyles. This is a passion for me. Hence my involvement with the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute and their Let's Move Canada podcast series and an upcoming national forum, which you can watch from anywhere in the world on June 7th. Kindly visit chfi.fit. That's chfi.fit if you want to learn more. Encouraging people to be fitter and healthier not only reduces the impact of disease such as arthritis, but it enhances their chances to have a better quality of life, whether enjoying their closest relationships, engaging with nature, or just doing their work or chores. Being healthy also enhances our chances of maintaining independence further into our senior years. You know the recipe: healthy food in moderate portions, hydration, sleep, calmness, or at least reduced stress, having a sense of purpose, reasonable weight management, and moderate regular exercise. I can't emphasize these enough, yet we'll leave them for a different discussion. When we think of supplements for arthritis, glucosamine and chondroitin are usually top of mind, representing 1/3 or more of all natural joint health sales. Other common choices include collagen, omega-3, fish oil, curcumin, and other ingredients, including CBD. So let's take a brief look at these choices. So starting with glucosamine, what is it and what's the evidence? Glucosamine is an amino sugar, often paired with chondroitin. These supplement ingredients are intended to support your body's natural production of cartilage, and glucosamine is most commonly sourced from the outer shells of shellfish or crustaceans, such as shrimp, lobsters, and crabs, although vegetarian options are available, typically sourced from fermented corn or wheat. Chondroitin is sourced as a byproduct from animals or sharks. The largest study on these is the U.S. National Institute of Health, NIH, glucosamine chondroitin arthritis intervention trial, otherwise known as GATE, published in 2006, with ancillary studies published in 2008 and 2010. These, the resulting papers looked at results on a WOMAC scale, which is the Western Ontario McMaster Osteoarthritis Index, then the structural gap in the knees, and finally, a longer-term revisit of the WOMAC scores. The news of the day was that glucosamine and chondroitin didn't work. But that wasn't my take. My take was that over time, they did perform slightly better than placebo and actually not too far behind the pharmaceutical that was included as a reference point. Over a 2-year period, the final study reported the odds of achieving a 20% greater reduction in WOMAC scores than the placebo were 21% on the pharmaceutical and 16% on glucosamine. Another big glucosamine study was done in Australia, the Australian Long-Term Evaluation of Glucosamine Sulfate Study, known as LEGS. It was published in 2015. It evaluated the joint space narrowing, known as JSN, and the maximum knee pain as self-reported in a participant survey. The results showed modest symptomatic benefit above placebo, including some reduction in JSN at 2 years. However, the NIH study did not show any change in JSN. Bottom line, glucosamine, when combined with chondroitin sulfate or other approved ingredients, may have some benefits versus placebo over time. Another popular joint builder is hydrolyzed collagen, a structural protein found in animal tissues. There are numerous collagen types, maybe over 20, but for supplements, generally there is type 1 or type 2, animal and marine sourced. Unlike glucosamine, I'm not aware of any defining large studies on collagen for joint health, but there are numerous smaller studies, some with proprietary formulations. There seems to be no consistency on dosing, but the dosages that showed promise tend to be far higher than are generally recommended for skin and hair health, and results, aside from placebo, need time. The challenge for these joint building supplements is they aren't adequately addressing at least, the underlying issue, inflammation. Let me illustrate. Think of the majestic polar bears and the receding polar ice caps shrinking their habitat. So you think, I'd like to help. So you fill some coolers with ice, head up to the north, and empty your coolers on an ebb tide. And if enough of us join us, surely it will make a difference, right? Or maybe not. Wouldn't it be better just to turn down the temperature so the ice didn't melt so fast? Turning down the heat, so to speak, has led to the growth of joint health supplements that focus on inflammation, the underlying process in joint and arthritis pain. The leading inflammation-fighting supplement choices are omega-3 fish oils and curcumin, a herbal ingredient. For omega-3 fish oil, there's broad research extending far beyond joint health, and it is generally good news. Additionally, most omega-3 fish oils tested by Consumer Reports in 2023 met the label claims for quantity and purity. While I recommend joint omega-3 supplements, such as especially for people with modest consumption of the cold water fish such as salmon, don't expect omega-3 fish oils on their own to provide fast results for easing arthritic symptoms. On the other hand, some proprietary curcumins may offer reasonably rapid relief. Natural curcumin is from the tuber rhizome root of the turmeric plant, native to Southeast Asia. I say natural curcumin because there's also growing use of synthetic curcumin, which is a petroleum derivative. Natural curcumin is a small portion of the tuber root, well under 10%, and do note that that within that small fraction there are 3 important curcuminoids: curcumin, dimethylcurcumin, and bisdimethylcurcumin. And the bisdimethylcurcumin is about 6% of the total curcuminoids in that fraction of the curcumin root, and is many considered to be the key curcuminoid. I like curcumin a lot due to its broad potential health benefits, but I wouldn't trust just any curcumin due to the risk of impurities such as fillers and agricultural contaminants, and that without the right co-ingredients, it's very difficult to it's when I say it's very difficult to absorb, the body just doesn't like to absorb curcumin on its own. So that's why I suggest sticking to branded curcumin ingredients, such as Mariva, made by Indina, an Italian company. It has natural co-ingredients to aid the balanced absorption of curcuminoids, and it has extensive clinical research and thorough quality control, including testing for over 300 pesticides. But what about cannabis oil, otherwise known as CBD? It's a natural ingredient found in cannabis and hemp plants. Can it be considered a natural herb? Well, regulators in Canada and the US aren't so sure. In Canada, I think manufacturers should have the opportunity to register CBD as a natural health product under Canada's very thorough natural and non-prescription health product guidelines. But could a CBD manufacturer meet the test of clinically supported claims for joint health? I'm not so sure. There are many who claim it just hasn't been studied as it has been illegal until recently. Yet it hasn't been illegal everywhere. An acquaintance of mine with a leading US clinical research study organization based in California told me there have been lots of studies, but sponsors haven't liked the results, which is in some cases lag placebo. Let me quote a Harvard Medical Review article. While there are laboratory studies suggesting CBD might be a promising approach, well-designed studies demonstrating compelling evidence that CBD is safe and effective for chronic arthritis pain in humans do not exist. Ouch. It's no wonder that following the dramatic rise of CBD for joint pain, there's also been a dramatic fall. But the CBD story, not just the massive research dollars overall, highlights that consumers and experts are still looking for new ways to address and mitigate arthritic symptoms. So before going further, let me share a caveat. Every body is different, and no one solution is going to have universal results. And specifically for those listening in the US today, what I'm about to share is not fully DSHEA compliant, but it is FTC compliant as the statements are supported by data. So let's unearth a new approach. And yes, that's a play on words. The new approach may be a new discovery, but it's old. It's really old, and it's from the earth, hence the title. It's a hydrothermal clay mineral complex discovered high in the Sierra Mountains by an intrepid explorer looking for gold. The registered trade name, Sierra Sil, reflects the source and the silicate structure. The prospector observed animals grazing on a sparkling mineral deposit and subsequently, drawing on ancient knowledge of clays for healing, he tried it with his animals and then with people in his network. That was back in the 1970s, but it wasn't until my dad and I and some additional investors acquired the mineral rights that research began in the 2000s. We've learned that this deposit is basically a volcanic rock that was geothermically altered about 8 to 10 million years ago with an intense acidic natural wash, thus a hydrothermal mineral deposit, something that can't be recreated in a lab. We know that Sierra Sil calms inflammation at a gene expression level that affects nitric oxide release, effectively slowing down silent or soaker hose inflammation. We also know from clinical studies that Sierra Sil reduces cartilage breakdown, detoxifies by attracting and binding heavy metals that lets them pass safely through your body, and that it reduces delayed onset muscle soreness, or known as DOMS, and improves peak sport power. That's pretty cool. The detox effects does come with two cautions though. Drink plenty of water so the process can do its job, and two, take Sierra Sil away from critical medications. We know these things because of a commitment to firsthand clinical research. The research has included various lab safety studies, such as the Ames test, acute oral toxicity, subacute oral toxicity, all done to establish protocols. Even at the most rigorous levels, Sierra Sil has proven to be safe. The human clinical studies have included pilot studies, double-blind, placebo-controlled published trials, and even double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover trials. The results have been remarkably consistent. Improved WOMAC scores, improved quality of life scores, and excellent safety profiles. Let me share just three examples. One, a 6-month study by Dr. Jim Lavelle in Ohio. I will never forget a call from Dr. Lavelle, in part because of his ironic choice of words, at least ironic to me. Dr. Lavelle advised me that Searsil was going to be a killer product for heart disease. And he went on to explain the correlation between heart disease and lead buildup, and that there was a statistically significant evidence that Searsil, and I quote, may have a profound effect on the lowering of lead levels and may have the potential to lower the risk of adverse health effects associated with lead exposure. In other words, Searsil may be pulling lead out of the body, possibly substantially reducing a number of health risks. Let me quote from the paper on the study. As a natural chelating agent, ingestion of Searsil caused a 56.9% decrease in lead between T0 and T6, that's month 0 and month 6, and a 62.7% decrease between T3 and T6, both of which are statistically significant at the 5% level. It appears that the daily ingestion of Searsil may have a profound effect on the lowering of lead levels and may have the potential to lower the risk of the adverse health effects associated with lead exposure. 2. Our largest study, a double-blind, placebo-controlled, crossover clinical study with 150 people in Ontario, Canada. Here's what was agreed to in the peer-reviewed published research. Dr. Mel Evans of KGK Synergize wrote that Searsil significantly improved physical function and total physical activity, improving the quality of life of participants. It was most effective in normal weight subjects, showing that increased dosage may be required for North American subjects with BMIs greater than 25. That's pretty remarkable. If you're suffering with arthritis, isn't that exactly what you want? Quality of life improvement. Now, I should note that the study was not done according to previously recommended protocol. Unknown to the sponsor, Searsil, the protocol was changed from a once daily weight-dependent dose away from food to a split dose with food and the same dose regardless of the participant's weight. Yet the results were still positive, although not as overwhelmingly so as the real-life experience of Searsil customers who use the natural health product as directed. 3. Research by Dr. Don McKenzie at the University of BC Sport Medicine Clinic using university athletes. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, and again crossover study. Dr. McKenzie reported that the results followed the expected outcome for both performance data and DOMS. Expected because Dr. McKenzie and some of his colleagues were already familiar with some of the research on Searsil. He wrote that in addition to reduced DOMS, that the 3% improvement in peak performance with the treatment group versus the slight reduction on when they were on placebo was certainly sport significant. His associate Jack Taunton, who very sadly passed away last fall and was one of the most highly regarded sport physicians in Canada, declared every Canadian Olympian should be using Searsil. Dr. Jack, as he was known, isn't the only physician to comment on the Searsil minerals. A leading Canadian neurosurgeon, Dr. Chris Honey, who, by the way, wrote a really terrific book, I highly recommend it, called The 10th Nerve, said for him, the Searsil minerals enabled him to defer hip surgery for many years, and he liked that they were not only effective, but side effect free. Specifically, Dr. Honey wrote to an orthopedic surgeon friend, and I quote, while I was waiting for my hip replacement surgery, while I was waiting for my hip replacement, I used Searsil and had surprisingly good response in terms of pain and mobility. Not enough to avoid the procedure, but enough to make the wait more comfortable. It was an unblinded cohort of one, but personally convincing. Dr. Kam Sajanya, head of rheumatology at Western Canada's largest hospital, wrote, about 2 years ago, after discussion with other physicians, I investigated the research on the Sierra minerals. Subsequently, I recommended them to some of my patients with mild to moderate OA and/or RA. It is my observational experience that the minerals have been helpful in the majority of patients. Many of these patients have felt less pain and have been more able to resume exercise or enhance their mobility or other activity, improving outcomes and well-being. I note that the onset of such results has typically been within 1 or 2 weeks, surpassing my expectations. As these are just my observational findings, may encourage Sierra Health to continue the research. I could share many more testimonials from experts, including Dr. Earl Mendel and his PhD in pharmacist, the author of the Vitamin Bible, and of his wife, Gail, who both became Sierra converts. But what's my point in sharing these testimonials? I hope it's clear. The new approach may indeed offer some hope. I am not going to suggest it is the only hope, simply a new one, and that I hope you will consider among the many options for your patients or clients. So before returning to Sadiq, as I promised, let's remember the challenge. Arthritis is a big issue. Over $5 billion annually investing in seeking better management of it. The best management is most truly an integrative approach: lifestyle, diet, and exercise. Yet often that is not enough, which has led to perhaps a significant market for joint health supplements. Common choices are glucosamine, chondroitin, and collagen as joint builders, and omega-3 fish oil and certain herbs such as curcumin as inflammation calmers. But disappointment with these, or perhaps curiosity, led to the rise of CBD, but alas, which is also disappointed, which leads to something very old becoming something very new. The clay minerals trade name Sierra, sourced in the U.S. Sierras with a silicate mineral structure, supported by quality research, including safety studies, mechanism of action research, and double-blind, even crossover clinical studies. Minerals without dietary restriction, although as an abundance of caution, recommended to be taken away from critical medications due to their absorptive properties. So remember Sadiq, the young man with JIA? I met Sadiq in the spring of 2021. I learned about his pain and offered him Sierra. He was game to try anything, as he was almost without hope. Sadiq started using the Sierra and within days noticed his Whoop app recovery score improving. And he also noticed he was feeling better. He kept getting better, perhaps starting to feel normal. But was it placebo? When Sadiq finished his bottle, he didn't replace it, at least not right away. But the pain came back and the recovery scores descended. So on to another bottle Sierra. Quickly, the recovery scores started to ascend again, and his body started to feel better. Sadiq told me it's important that I note for you that he didn't change anything in his medication regime or his sleep pattern or anything else other than adding back the Sierra. Sadiq wrote that his recovery scores went up, along with how I felt in the mornings, throughout the day, and after all my training was completed each day. He also shared with me, with Sierra, I still get the occasional flare-up, but now I go sustained periods of time without pain for the first time in my life. Yes, ever that I can remember, and it helps me better manage my JIA. Ladies and gentlemen, arthritic pain is a big issue and sometimes a disabling one. We know that every body is different. No one protocol is going to be right and complete for everyone. But along with healthy lifestyles and diet choices, Sierra, the hydrothermal mineral complex discovered in the U.S. Sierra Mountains, supported by some reasonable research, may offer some light for those looking for a novel, albeit very old, natural approach to managing arthritis. Many of you will understand when I say what a joy it is to make a positive difference in people's lives. Thank you for this time.